our roundabout way, what did we talk about? We talked about what's a file. You know, a file is basically someplace where you put information. And you keep it on your drive in some hierarchical structure. It could either be at the root of that structure or somewhere down the path a little ways. What's a file system? Well, we talked just a little bit about a file system, but it controls how data is restored and how data is retrieved. So, if you want to save a file, you want to save that to someplace. Where are you going to save it to? Somewhere on your file system. Okay? When you want to retrieve that file, where are you going to retrieve it from? Somewhere on your file system. Hi, Pat. Welcome back. I'm so glad you came back. Okay. No, we're good. So, today, when we're talking about Windows 10, and I've got Windows 10 coming up in the background behind here somewhere. We're going to be talking about the NTFS file system. Does anyone know what NTFS stands for? New Technology File System, NTFS. It's been around since the late 90s. It was used extensively on servers. It's a networking operating system. Also, it does something called journaling. You ever hear of journaling before? Mm-hmm. In the good old days, if you lost a file, if you're using the file allocation tables file system, if you lost a file, it was essentially gone. Okay, you couldn't retrieve it. When you have a journaled file system, the journaled file system keeps a record of what that file was called. It keeps a record of the object and what was in it, so it can be recovered, because the journaling is basically that record. So all modern file systems that are used on consumer electronics, whether you're using Linux or a Mac or a PC, you're going to have some type of a journal file system, so data can be recovered if it's accidentally lost or lost on purpose. That happens every once in a while as well. So when we look at Windows 10, we're going to assume, and I know it's dangerous to assume, but we're going to assume that NTFS is the underlying operating system. Now, not only is NTFS journal, it's also a networking operating system, and it can have things like access control lists, and it can have ways of allowing persons to certain resources and keeping them away from certain resources and hiding things. And if you're in a networking environment and one person opens file A and another person opens file A, and this one saves it, what happens to this person's changes that they may make? Well, they get lost or they corrupt the file. So you have to have some way of controlling that. And a file system like NTFS, which is a networking operating system, file system, will have the means of controlling access to those files. Who has the most permission, who can use it, whose changes get saved, and things like that. So it's real important when you get into the networking world that you understand how journaling works, and having a good networking operating system and file system is really important. Now, we talked about common file extensions. What's the one we were looking at? .txt, right? And what program is the file that ends in .txt available for default on any Windows computer? Notepad.
Oh, Notepad.
Notepad, right.
What about Word?
It's not by default.
Okay.
You have to install Word on there. Yeah, well, and that's TXT. And Word would not open a text file. Now, there's a difference between a word processor, which is also known as a document processor, and a text editor. Okay? Notepad is a text editor. Basically, it means there are no frills. what you see is what you get. You get the letters, you get the spaces, you don't get any special paragraphs or line spacing. You can't change the fonts, you can't underline it, you can't make it italics. It's plain text. It's what programmers use when they write programs and things like that, as well as quick notes and things like that. Now, if you're writing a nice letter to somebody and you want to have all the formatting, like capital letters and bold and italics and different fonts and things like that, you would use a document processor. But if you did programming in a document processor and you did not save your file as a plain text file, the file would be unusable because you would have all of these extra characters that are thrown into the document that are basic, represent your caps, and not your caps, but your bold and your underline, and all your formatting is not acceptable by a text editor, but it's completely acceptable by a document processing program, like Word or LibreOffice Writer or things like that. Does that make sense?
Sure.
So if you had a computer that had Excel on it, okay, and you double-clicked on a file that had the extension XLS, what would it open up in? Excel, okay? If you had a plain vanilla Windows and you had a file that had an extension .bmp on it, that's a picture. What would it open up in? Paint. Okay, Paint is the default program, at least up until now. If you had a file extension with PDF on it today, if you had a file extension with PDF, you just went out and you bought a brand new Windows 10 computer from Costco or Office Depot or something, and you double clicked on that PDF file, what program would it open up in?
PDF.
No, Microsoft Edge. Edge, because Microsoft Edge can read and display PDF files, which are portable document files, normally used in Adobe Acrobat or Adobe Acrobat Reader. Okay, but Internet, Edge will open up those files. Now, what happens if your computer comes with Edge and then you install Adobe Acrobat Reader on your computer and you go and you double click on that file, what program is going to open up in? Edge. It's going to continue to open up in Edge because you didn't tell it now to associate itself with Adobe Reader, which is something that you're going to need to do. So let's see how far we got here. A little more familiar. So we're going to be working in Windows 10 now, something that might be more familiar to some and not as familiar to others. Nice big cursor. What's happening in the other program is it wouldn't let me go all the way to the top, and get to places, so I was struggling a bit. But we're okay now. So this is a plain vanilla Windows 10 computer here. What is the program that you use to see your files in Windows 10? In fact, what are these icons on the bottom here? Okay? That's your folder, so that's your File Explorer. Okay, that's going to show you all your files. What's this? This is Microsoft Edge on the bottom here. And now what's this crazy thing here, this task view? Has anybody ever worked with that before? It's actually a really cool thing, but 99.9% of the people don't know what it is or don't care what it is. Well, I'm going to show you just because I'm brutal. We're going to get there. So we're going to click on this here once. And you see it says New Desktop. Okay? So what do I have to do here? Okay. So now I have a new desktop here. And it gives me this here. What happened to my stuff on the other desktop? Well, there was nothing really there, but if I click on here again, and I go back to desktop 1, now what happens if I open this folder here, which is our File Explorer. This will take a minute to come up, hopefully not much longer. So basically, this happens in Linux, and you can do the same thing on a Mac, and you can do the same thing in just about any application, any major operating system. You can have more than one environment open at the same time. Okay, so here we have familiar things like my desktop and my documents and my pictures and downloads and things like that. Most people are familiar with that. These are the frequent folders. Do these actually live on your computer somewhere just the way they are? Now these are just pointers to something. And where are these associations kept? Where do things get registered in Windows computers? In the registry. So everything you see here is from something that is saved in the Windows registry right now. That's not necessarily true for everything on the left side here. And we're going to talk about what these all are over here. But these are just pointers to things over here. Now what is this bar called up on top here? It's called the ribbon bar. Okay? Ribbon bar. Okay, if you bring it up like that, the ribbon bar goes away, and you have to click on something like File again or Home to bring up the ribbon bar again if you want to get back to the ribbon bar. So if I go to View over here, click on View, I should get the ribbon bar back. And this has all the view options. Okay, I can look, right now I'm looking at tiles. I can look at a list of files over here, and it's getting covered up a little bit. I can look at details of files over here. If I want this bar to stay up all the time, you see this little push pin over here? If I push that push pin in, it will stay there, okay? If I want it to go away, now that I pushed the push pin, it went away, didn't it? Please wait. Love it when it's not responding. Okay. So the next thing we're going to talk about is your Windows profile. And I think that's really the most important thing for people to understand, because in Windows 10, if you only have one person logged onto your computer, okay, let's say you just bought the computer, you logged in for the first time, now you have your screen and everything, and you saved a few documents. Where do those documents get saved in the file system? They get saved into your profile. And that profile is named at whatever the username is. So if my computer came up if I assigned my username Tom, for example, all of my files would be in a profile called Tom. Okay, and we can actually go look at that. So if Tom was working on a Windows 7 machine for the last 5-6 years, and he saved a whole bunch of pictures, and he saved a whole bunch of files, and he saved a bunch of movies and things like that, and he copied the files in his profile from his old computers and put them onto his new computer, into his profile. He put his pictures in his pictures and his documents in his documents and things like that. Is that how you transfer files from one computer to another? The answer is yes. That's how you do it. It's an equal thing for an equal thing. Or else, sometimes what we'll do is instead of copying them directly from one computer to the other, we'll copy them onto a little thumb drive, and then we'll organize them and delete things or whatever, and then we'll copy the ones we want to put onto our new computer, and that way it keeps it a little bit cleaner. Okay, so everybody has a profile. Now if I log on to my computer and Marlene logs on to the same computer with a different username and password, how many profiles are we going to have on that computer? Two. Right. And if there's a third person, it's going to be 3. Okay? So what if the user, Tom, was an administrator? Now, an administrator in Windows means that you have all kinds of rights and privileges and you can do stuff. So if Tom, me, and Marlene, or of course Tom, Marlene, or I, were on the same computer, and Tom was the only administrator, he could look at our files, but we couldn't look at his unless we knew his username and password. Okay? So the administrator has more rights and privileges on a computer, which is why the ideal way to use a computer is to, when you install it with Tom, that's your main profile as an administrator. Well, Tom should have another profile that's just a standard user, because that way, if he logs on as a standard user, he doesn't have administrator privilege, and he can't break as many things, or a hacker can't come in and break as many things on his computer unless they know the administrator's username and password. So the administrator is the all-powerful, he's the Wizard of Oz, The rest of us are just Dorothy, the Lion, and the Tin Man, we're just along for the ride, okay? So let's look at what is here. So we see something called quick access. And this just absolutely drives me nuts. What is quick access? Does anybody know? They're just pointers. Yeah, they're just pointers. They're aliases. They're just supposed to make life easier. But in my mind, yeah, they can make it easier once you understand what they are, okay? So quick access, that will take you to your desktop, okay, quickly. It will take you to your downloads. Whose desktop and whose profile are we looking at? The user who's logged on, okay? So if Tom is logged on here, we're looking at Tom's documents and pictures and things like that, okay? But these are just representations. On here, we also have something called this PC, okay? And when we're talking about this PC, we're talking about the computer here that I'm working on, or the virtual machine which I'm actually logged into. And in this PC, we also see something like this PC has a C drive. But it also has documents, and it also has downloads, and also has desktop. So if Tom was a user that logged on, these are also Tom's profile. Okay? That's also Tom's profile. But this is what it really is. If you were to click on the disk here, we see some folders. Now these folders are objects, aren't they, Alice? These are just objects. They have properties. Windows old, that's what happens when you reset a computer. It copies the old version into this folder called Windows old. That can actually be removed. This is how we did the upgrade. But you also notice there's something in the middle here called users. Guess what's in the users folder? The user profiles, okay? So that's where your files will be kept that you would want to copy over to your new computer. If you really want to know what it's all about, we're going to double click on users here. And hopefully it will work for us. Okay, so I logged into this computer as BDT, my initials, okay? But there's also another profile here called public. Public is a shared profile. If I put something in the public, any user that had permissions could get to those files. And by default, meaning that automatically, anyone could get to those files that are in public. If I put a shortcut in the public desktop, it would show up on your desktop, okay, as well, because it's shared by everyone who lives on that computer. It's the old all users folder.
But in order to get to public, they have to have your computer, don't they?
Yes.
Like I can't get to public, your public from my computer.
Not unless you're not logged in over a network. Or a terminal session or some other way you're connecting to my computer. Now, someone who can get into your computer over the internet can get into your public.
Sure.
Yeah. There are all kinds of tips and tricks and things we could.
Why would you put something in public?
You want to share it with all your users. You don't want to copy it to each.
But they have to, in order to share it, they have to get into your computer, right?
No, no, what I'm saying is, let's say this is my computer, it's
Okay.
sitting in the living room. Marlene walks in the living room and logs on as Marlene. Now she could also use the stuff in public. Now you come over to my house and you get in, you
Still
log
using
on
the
as
same
Tom.
computer, okay.
Yeah, it'll be things that are shared by everybody who
On that
can
computer.
connect to this, either on this computer or can connect to that computer over a network. Okay? So that's the public profile. This is my profile, the BDT profile. Now, what does it have in it? Well, what do you think it has in it? It has the desktop, it has documents,
And your favorites.
yeah, it has let's start at the top here. 3D objects, those are something new. That's if you're using the new programs that actually let you work with 3D objects. They will get saved automatically in there because they know how to do that. Okay, your computer's smart. Contacts, if you do keep your contact list in your computer, it will get saved in this folder right here. Your documents will get saved here. I don't think there's anything in here at the moment. Oh, here we go with those level 1 and level 2 docs like I had before. That's why it didn't work in the other one, because I had set it up in Windows 10. So this is where your folders are. So this, now we see on top here, we have something that says this PC, local disk, users, BDT, and documents. Now that's the hierarchical view, okay? If we were to click in this box here, we can see it change. So here we have C drive, the subfolder is users, there's another subfolder called BDT, and there's a folder called documents, and that's where the level 2 folder and the doc1 file live in that folder there. If I go to level 2 here, okay, and once again, I have level 3 now as a subfolder of that, and another file called doc1, which is a text document, which probably has an extension of what on it? So let's come up now. If we go just to the ribbon bar, we can just click on this box and say file name extensions, and it shows up as TXT. You know, so someone like me cannot work without seeing the extensions. So I turn them on right away. Other people who may not be comfortable with that, people who don't even know what they are, it doesn't matter. But if I double click on this, it's going to open up with some file. What file is it going to open up with? Well, if it hasn't been changed, it's going to open up in the notepad, right? Okay, so yeah, so here we are in Notepad. Now, how did it know how to use Notepad?
TXT.
Because the TXT was associated. Someone's having a great time.
Yeah, right.
Because in the registry, the TXT file is associated with Notepad. So how do we prove that? And this is a science class. We're going to say it. We have to prove it. So if we go in here, we go to the control panel. And we wait. Well, anyway, the control panel has an application that connects to the registry. And it writes it in the registry. So if we go to the control panel here, And most people are used to seeing this come up by default as category. I usually choose large or small icons. For this particular session, we'll choose large icons, and these are what people are used to seeing in the control panel. Okay, if we look at File Explorer options here, and we go to View, and we go to, let's see, what am I looking for? So this is the thing we saw before, where we could say hidden files or no hidden files. Let's see. So, choose a default app for each file type. Remember we were just saying something, we were just saying file associations? Well, now Windows is telling you a new name for that. Choose the default app for each file type, okay? Do something. Okay. So it's loading this in the background here. So basically we're going to see that same list again that we had before. It's going to say DOC or DOCX, and it's going to show that the program associated with that was Microsoft Word. Or if you don't have Word on there, if you have LibreOffice or something, you would say LibreWriter on there instead of Word. But this list basically, for every file extension that is known to work with the program, it has to be in that list. Otherwise, it will not open up automatically. If it doesn't open up automatically, that basically means you need to go into the program itself and go to File and Open and then select the file. Okay. So you can see there are some really crazy numbers here, like .386. It doesn't have a default program with it. Okay. So if you double clicked on a file that had .386, it wouldn't know what program to open up with. But if you double clicked on something that had a .3FR, it would open up in the folder in the Photos application. We go down the list here to find. I don't have Word on here. So it probably won't be a DOC. The CSV file, the comma separated value, that's a plain text file. Okay, so here's a doc file. What does it opens up with? It doesn't know. Okay? There's no Word on here, there's no LibreOffice. But if you open up the DOC file, excuse me, DOCX file, so WordPad, what's nice about WordPad and Notepad and File Explorer, they come with every version of Windows that you buy, so it's always going to be there. Now, I heard someone say in the back, well, let's look at PDF. PDF's going to be in here. What's it going to open up with?
Your Echo, or, Echo.
Who said Edge?
Edge.
Yeah. Why is it opening up with Edge? Because there's no Adobe Acrobat or Adobe Acrobat Reader or another program that is specifically there to open up those kinds of portable document files. And these are really prevalent. In fact, that file that we're looking at that had the information about profiles and things like that, that's a PDF file, the one you downloaded from our website. You're not supposed to be able to edit those, but you can. You can actually edit them in Microsoft Word. You can save them from Word into a PDF file. They're the type of documents that can be sent to you by an attorney and you can sign it and send it back. So they have some security to them if they're set up correctly. But these default app associations are really important. So that's why if there's a PDF file on your desktop, it's going to have an E associated with it. That's why if you're using a browser, let's say you're using Firefox, okay? So let's say you install Firefox on your computer. A lot of people like using the Firefox browser. Install it on your computer. You find a file that you want to open up, or you find a file on your desktop that is a website. What's the icon going to be on it? Is it going to be Firefox or is it going to be Edge? It's going to be Edge, okay? Because you haven't changed it yet
Default.
to be your default application, okay? And how the heck would you do that? So these were default apps. Now there's something, choose default programs, okay? So these are your default apps here. So if you look at your web browser, what's your web browser set to? It's set to Edge, okay? If you were to click on this, well, you can choose Internet Explorer. Of course, Microsoft recommends Edge. But if you also had Firefox on here, your computer is smart enough to list Firefox here as well. And if you clicked on Firefox, that will now become your default browser. All of your web icons on your pages will change. Everything that's HTML or related to the internet will change to the little Firefox icon, and it will be associated, it will be the application that opens up when you click on one of those files. And of course there's an exception to that, because Microsoft has an exception to every good sense rule that you have. If you had Firefox as your default browser and you went to www.google.com, what application do you think it would open up with? Edge. Yeah, because even though you have another one set to be the default program, even if you click in a website down here, it'll still come up with Edge because that's how Microsoft programmed it. Okay? Does it make sense? A little bit of sense, I hope?
A little bit.
Okay. So here you'll notice that doc1.txt. Does it say anything about Notepad on here at all? It gives us a Notepad icon. How does it know that that's the right icon for that extension? Because it's set as the default file association that you want to use for that program. Okay, for that extension. So if you were to open this up, it would open up in Notepad. Okay, if this was doc1.txt and you had, or it was doc1.doc or docx, and you had installed Microsoft Word on there and you let Word become the default application for your system, this would change to a W for Word, okay? Because now it's associated in the registry with that extension is associated with that application, okay? And those can all be changed and manipulated, and sometimes they have to. Sometimes the main troubleshooting that we have to do is making sure that the apples equal apples and not apples equal oranges, because that doesn't work. So the big thing about working with computers is being a good enough bookkeeper to stick with it long enough to figure out if you're talking apples to apples. When you're talking apples to apples, things work. When you're talking apples to pears or bananas, things aren't going to work. Okay? Yes?
I was just thinking, does any of this change if there's a electrical interruption?
No. No. Only if it fries your computer, then your computer won't work at all.
Yeah.
Okay? I think it's time to take another quick stop here. If that's okay? 5 minutes?
Your next stop, the Twilight Zone.